strike down of the president's vaccine mandate for big business comes as many top CEOs say that labor shortages remain their biggest problem. So let's get reaction now from all of this from former U.S. Labor Secretary under Donald Trump, Eugene Scalia. Eugene, the High Court's ruling must come, surely, as a big relief for businesses across the country.
Well, Ashley, good to join you. And certainly there were a number of companies that were concerned by the mandate that was being placed on their workers at a time there already was a shortage. And you had many workers saying they just wouldn't do it and they would quit if they had to. On the other hand, there are many businesses that still do want to get their employees vaccinated. Of course, they are free to continue to seek to do that. What I would emphasize, though, is, this is a high-profile setback for the Labor Department. When I was there as Labor Secretary, I was under a lot of pressure to adopt one of these emergency rules about COVID, but we didn't do it. I thought it would be a distraction from our other efforts to deal with COVID. We had a very comprehensive program of guidelines for workers and companies about how to address the virus. And we thought we had existing inspection and enforcement authority that we could use to address it. Now, Ashley, one of the things that makes this decision really a setback for the Labor Department is that the authority that the Labor Department once thought it had has now been shrunk by the court. The court has said that COVID in the ordinary workplace is not an occupational hazard, that the Occupational Safety and Health Administration at the Labor Department can address. The court said if you're in a special workplace where you're dealing with the COVID virus, or if you're in a really cramped environment, then OSHA has a role. But, sometimes when government agencies overreach, they come away with less than they had before. And I'm actually concerned for the Labor Department that that's part of what they're wrestling with today, that the program that I put in place, which was largely continued under the current Labor Secretary, is now going to have to be narrowed, separate and apart from the fact this emergency rule was thrown down.
Eugene, taking a step back, we talk about the labor shortage problem. How do we get people back into the workforce? That participation rate needs to come up. How do we do it?
Well, certainty helps. And I think that one of the concerns this mandate has caused is just there's been uncertainty hanging over employers, workers for months now. And so that may be a blessing to the market. When the president came in, he embraced some very progressive social welfare policies and a narrative that the economy was in terrible shape and that significant spending and unemployment benefits were needed. That was a mistake. I do think that also contributed to workers being on the sideline. And workers have gradually been coming back. But it's been slow, and now, of course, we're encountering other headwinds too. So it's become a more challenging economic environment for the president. Meanwhile, of course, he has other very large regulatory ambitions for other federal agencies. The decision by the court yesterday is going to be a setback, I think, for the regulatory plans of other agencies, because the court has now made very clear it doesn't believe that regulatory agencies, administrative agencies, should be making huge policy changes unless Congress gave them clear authority to do so. There could be a blessing there for the president, because I think that one way to get workers back and keep the economy going the way it had been is to avoid unnecessary regulations. Yesterday's decision makes that harder for the president. And again, that could be a blessing in disguise for him.
It could well be. I mean, how concerned are you about the supply chain and the impact it's having on businesses and on labor? Businesses are having to increasingly pay more for their goods and pay more for the workers they can keep.
Well, when I've talked to employers about their challenges, it's been understanding these OSHA requirements, and now they'll have new questions there. That's been a challenge. And, of course, it's been bringing workers back. You had many companies, particularly the transportation sector, for example, fearful that this mandate was going to make it even harder to deliver goods. So the supply chain problem has many causes, but this rule not being in place, I think, will ease that problem just a bit at least.
Well, let's hope. Thank you so much, Eugene Scalia, for joining us today. We appreciate your insight. Thank you.
My pleasure.